There can be no doubt that if all one knows of fire is the dance of light and shadow on a wall, then the direct perception of a roaring blaze will radically transform one's views of reality and one's place in it. Enough. I'm tired of thinking about it. Words are a lousy means of communication. Brains are no place for serious thinking. And indescribable experiences are silly things to try to describe. I close my eyes and release all the events of the day using a cleansing breath until I feel free of all the petty challenges and frustrations that come with the teacher thing. When I open my eyes, I find Soneya sitting in the other comfy chair. She is smiling. Bad sign. "You'll have an appointment tomorrow," she informs me. Now she's my booking secretary. "You have to be in Iowa City tomorrow at the boathouse on the river at 11 o'clock to meet my KGB contact, Julie Myers, who will be interviewing you." Interviewing me? For her New Age magazine. Interview? What interview? Since when do I do interviews? Since when does anyone want to interview me? Why? But Soneya is already gone. Chapter 17. Would you murder me? If in hell I could hold one curl of your hair, I'd think the saints of heaven in torment. Rumi. I do as I'm told. The next day I make the 20-minute drive to Iowa City in my car with my bike attached to a carrier on back. I'm there by a little after 10, so I park a few blocks away from the campus and get the bike ready. Iowa City is a great place for riding, and the weather is cooperating admirably. Dark clouds are rolling in, and the distant thunder provides a rumbling promise of good things to come. It's Saturday, and the campus is quieter than the downtown area, so I go zipping merrily between and around the buildings that once housed the state's government, before it was bundled off to Des Moines, at which time the university acquired the old Capitol buildings and grounds. There are a few students dozing and reading on the grass, a few basketball games in progress, but the gray skies and approaching weather seem to be keeping most people inside, so I have wide sidewalks and mostly clear sailing. After a grand time careening along the walkways of higher education, with only one close call involving an inline skater and a frisbee-chasing dog, I note that it's 2 minutes to 11, so I turn down a steep path that plummets me headlong into the river valley, where I barely make a right in time to stay dry and follow the river walk for a quarter mile to a pedestrian bridge that I shoot across at a heady clip, followed by a series of hard lefts and some even harder braking to stop on the boat ramp with my front tire in the drink. I'm at the boathouse, and it's 11 on the button. Right on time, Julie points out. Punctuality is the politeness of kings. Politeness of kings is my middle name, I reply. You're lying. Only by omission. My full name is Jed, Hope of Nations, theme for poets, politeness of kings, McKenna. My mother thought auspicious naming might make me turn out well. And has it? Too soon to tell. You probably shouldn't lie to me, you know. I would never lie to you. Really? No, not really. So you would lie to me. You're dancing around the edges of an interesting subject. Oh, and how would I cut to the heart? Just max out the question. Instead of asking if I'd fib to you or steal your recipe for cherries flambé, would you murder me? Exactly. Okay, so you would. Murder me. Sure. Under what circumstances? Under whatever circumstances dictate that I should murder you, of course. But see, Here we are digressing into a light treatment of right action theory when we have yet to properly Oh, you're Julie. Yes. We met out at the house. Yes. I've seen you there several times. I've been there 5 or 6 times, twice for the whole day. Did Sonia put you to work? Oh, yeah. One day we tore apart the kitchen and cleaned it down to the floorboards. One day I spent in the potting room in the basement preparing seedling starts. Well, that's very interesting. It is? Yes, I didn't know we had a potting room. I'll have to look into that. Really? No, not really. I'm lying again. You do that a lot. I just want to get it out of my system before the interview begins. Then you're not as punctual as you think, because the interview started about 20 lines of snappy dialogue ago. Oh. The boathouse is a long, unused stone cabin between the Riverwalk and the river. On the river side of the building is a covered porch and a concrete ramp that leads into the water. The boathouse has sat empty and locked up for years and is falling into disrepair, but it's one of the 3 best places to watch a storm in Iowa City. Julie is very pretty, slender and tall, with long, light brown hair and an easy way about her that I'm sure has coaxed intimacies from many an unguarded interviewee. She asks if she can call me Jed, and I say she can. She clips a small microphone to my shirt and plugs it into a micro-cassette recorder that I'll carry in my pocket. Throughout the interview, Julie will lean towards me and speak into my neck whenever she asks a question. I walk the bike around to the covered porch and set it against the building. I gesture for Julie to take a seat on the porch's low enclosing wall and sit down next to her. So, what were you doing out at the house? Talking to people about you. Learn anything interesting? Sonia had some amusing anecdotes to share. Sonia is a chronic liar. I'm afraid I have no respect for your journalistic instincts if you were unable to see that. Sonia could no more tell a lie than I could drink this river. Actually, she could. In fact, I bet she could murder you too. There's a story about Lord Krishna and his wives or consorts or whatever they are. You don't sound like you really know the story. Well, I'm not a Hindu and I don't use parables much, so you'll have to bear with me. So Krishna gets this headache, and the only way he can get any relief is to put pressure on it. So he asks each of these highly devoted females of his to stand on his head to relieve the pain. But they are shocked at the very idea. They think it's a test, and that they would spend an eternity in hell if their feet touched the Lord's head. So they all turn him down, except for the last one, whose name may or may not be Radha. If you use this, I hope you'll have your fact-checkers make me look good, or at least that you won't let me offend 1 billion Hindus. My readership is something under 1 billion. So Radha agrees to do it, and all the other women are absolutely shocked that she could be so evil as to place her feet on the Lord's head, which would be a mortal sin of the most grievous nature. And Radha tells them simply that she would be pleased to spend eternity in hell to bring her Lord a moment's comfort. Oh, shit. Yeah. So, Sonia, perfect devotion. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Yep, that's what I have to put up with. You don't mean she'd, are you saying for you? Whoa, no, Krishna. It's all about Krishna. She'd gut me like a fish if she thought it would tickle him. Nonsense. I won't print that. Thank you. The storm is on top of us now, but the rain hasn't started yet. Lightning can be seen to our left, and the thunder seems to be clapping down on us from directly above. Then, as we watch, a curtain of water comes traveling down the river towards us, and in a second, we are within the downpour and can watch to our right as the leading edge of the rain proceeds away from us. The other good storm-watching sites in town are both much higher up and afford a much grander view, but being tucked away cozy and dry on the boathouse porch, overlooking the river with a pleasant young lady, is very heaven. "I spoke to several of your students, too," says Julie. I assume they all spoke of me in the most glowing terms. Actually, they did, although quite a few have never spoken to you. Yeah, I don't pretend to understand a lot of what goes on out there. People come out for their own reasons. I know everything is going exactly as it should. I just don't know how or why. She consults her notes and comes up with the next question, probably meant as an icebreaker. "What's your most embarrassing moment as a teacher? Or don't you have one?" Well, I had a guy once who was totally stuck in the mud. Nowhere close to anything interesting, just wallowing in the details of his life. Family problems, money problems, health problems, and so forth. Couldn't get out of it, couldn't get above it. I wanted to encourage him to try to adopt a larger overview, a broader context within which to view his existence. So I told him to pretend that he just found out he was going to die tomorrow, and then look at all these problems in that light. That sounds very effective. I could see where that might put someone's day-to-day concerns into perspective. "Yeah," I respond somewhat sheepishly. "So could Billy Jack." She bursts into laughter. "Really? You got it from a Billy Jack movie?" "Yeah. I saw it when I was like 10. And the thing about dying tomorrow was probably my first profoundly moving insight. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the advice, but I regretted it as soon as I said it. I was afraid I'd be exposed as a fraud who just went around repeating kung fu movie wisdom." "What was your second profoundly moving insight?" "I don't know. Probably the cogito. Cogito ergo sum. I spent a lot of time with that one, years, really. If a tree falls in a forest and all that." "All that? You mean the Zen koan? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a noise?" "That's the one." "What does that have to do with I think, therefore I am?" "Well, they're basically the same solipsistic thing. The tree in the forest thing isn't a koan, because it has a very specific answer, which is yes." "Oh, well, I'm sure 100 generations of our best thinkers will be grateful." I laugh. "The answer is yes because the question says so. The question establishes that the tree and the forest are known to exist without being seen. So it naturally follows that any sound therein exists without being heard." It sounds like you found a loophole in the question. More like a wormhole into a deeper question. What do we know for sure? That's the real question. That's what the cogito is. That's what solipsism is. This isn't theory. This isn't belief or faith. This is the basic fact of existence. It's all about figuring out exactly what we know for certain as opposed to everything else. It's truly amazing that something so glaringly obvious and irrefutable is so universally ignored by science and philosophy and religion. And that is that we don't know anything. We can't know anything. Can you define anything? Solipsism is defined as the belief that the only thing you can know for sure is that you exist, and that any other true knowledge is impossible. But, like I say, it's not really a belief. It's just the way it is. So I know I'm sitting here, but no. You know that you are. Body, planet, space, time, people, everything else is taken on faith. So I'm not sitting here. No, you don't know that either. All this doesn't mean that what seems to be isn't, just that it's unverifiable. You could say that it's highly likely that you're sitting here. But that's not true either. There's no particular